Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President, Travel Channels, Amadeus, Decius Valmorbida, in discussion with Skift Travel Tech Editor Sean O'Neill.
Hello, I can't tell you how absolutely thrilled I am that we're here and this has happened. Everyone's heart and soul has been put into making this happen today. Friendly reminder, please use the Slido app or slido.com to ask your questions, and we'll have a Q&A in the end. I'm incredibly honored, and on behalf of the team, to have top executives from the three most powerful travel technology companies in the world, Amadeus, Sabre, and Travelport, here with us today at Skift Tech Forum. Airlines last year spent $7 billion on the distribution services of these three companies. If you have bought a plane ticket in the past decade, your ticket was touched at one point by Amadeus, Sabre, or Travelport. Now, the largest of them is Amadeus. Amadeus does so much more than that. It does solutions for hotels, airports, startups, and more. But for this conversation, we're going to talk about airline distribution, because that's the specialty of our guest, Decius Valmorbida. Thank you for coming from Madrid for this.
Hello, everyone.
This is American football, is where we are, right? But we're going to do apostasy here. How many people care about soccer, football in Europe, all right? All right, hey, they got half of the crowd here. So what's your view on the World Cup? Are you excited about this?
So Brazil has 5 championships. I think we're leading for the 6th. We're going to face Germany, for sure, at the final. Last time, it didn't go well for us. But this time, we'll have a revenge.
It makes for great TV, for sure. So let's talk about, earlier, we just heard from Hilton, we heard from Expedia. They're talking about personalized booking experiences. They're talking about how there's been a lot of changes in technology, customer expectations, business models. So how is Amadeus sort of addressing these changes?
Okay. I think we are in an interesting place on the industry, because we see what travelers are asking, we see what providers are asking, and then we have some differences in there. So usually when we are talking about travelers, personalization wouldn't be the word that comes in their mind first. No, they're really going after speed. So that's what they're really asking for. Mm-hmm. They're saying, how can I have instant? Mm-hmm. That's a big theme. They're quite worried about privacy. So they're quite worried what are you doing with their data and how are going to share their data, and they're buying trips. Mm-hmm. So they would like to have providers working together much more. So they're saying, why do I have a silo between air, rail, hotel? Why can't I have all of that as part of the trip? So that's what we're seeing for travelers. And then when you talk to providers, yes, personalization then becomes the holy grail, mm-hmm. Because loyalty has become an expensive exercise. Going in the market and finding travelers every time on the spot market, that's very expensive. Keep mm-hmm. acquiring them. Mm-hmm. So this means that I would like to increase loyalty, and then all of those words, experience, personalization, they come into it. So we need to build a system that cater for the needs of the traveler, mm-hmm. at the same time, not ignoring the needs of the providers. So we need to find that balance. We're trying always to find that sweet spot.
Cool. Well, one way that Amadeus differs from your competitors in how much you guys have spent on research and development. Since 2004, you've spent more than €5 billion. The European Commission has ranked you guys as the top travel technology spenders in Europe consistently. This is a technology conference, so people here would like to know how you're going to spend money on technology. So sure. For air distribution, what are you looking at?
Very good. So I think we have, again, some strengths by being a diversified business. I think that having access to the inventory, so we're the leading PSS for full-service carriers, we're the leading PSS for low-cost carriers. We're now entering into the hotel space, so having the live inventory of providers, that is a very good advantage. And I think you have 2 transformations that are happening on the air distribution. One that is functional, but you have another one that is really, really technical. So on the technical side, I think the big thing now is cloud. So based on the scalability you're having, based on the demand, based on all of the transactions that we need to process, maybe it is not, no one would have that number in their head, But today at Amadeus, we're processing 20,000 transactions per second. That's the same as Google search. So we're talking about a huge level of transactions. And even if we would like to outsource that to someone, how many cloud providers today could cope with that demand? So we need to invest on moving away, and we did last year, from legacy technology, from TPF. We're going and making a big investment on cloud. And cloud, again, here, a big word. Now, many things can fit into cloud. It can be virtualization of infrastructure. So it means that you have the same code, but just running on virtual machines. When we say cloud, we're not saying that. We're really saying a change in architecture, active-active, really the possibility of having the same code distributed. So let's just imagine how you're going to have the PNR information, all of the reservation information from all of you. There's going to be distributed across many different countries, and how do you create a hierarchy of that? So it's
so one thing to pick up there. So you mentioned TPF code. You mentioned so a lot of the impressions that people have in the Valley is that the global distribution systems are old tech. You're dinosaurs. You've got code from IBM, like the TPF from before. And one of the things you're highlighting is you are moving away to cloud-based systems.
That's why I think we need to make the difference between the tech stack and the functionality. So tech stack, we are state-of-the-art. I think we are off TPF, we're open systems, we're making the investments on the cloud, we're processing huge amount of transactions, so I don't think that there is any issue. Then when you go to the functionality, obviously, the way we integrate ourselves to the airlines is based on a standard that was set up by IATA, and that standard has its dates, has its age. So whenever you want to replace that, and now we're discussing about the new distribution capability.
So just to get the audience in here, so what's happened is about 5 years ago, the airlines got together and they said, let's have new standards for how we communicate with each other on the computers for travel content. It's called the new distribution capability. And at first, the travel technology companies kind of resisted doing this, but then Amadeus was one of the leaders of in sort of embracing this as an approach to helping distribute content. It's using APIs, it's using XML-type language. And so you guys are leading in that. In 2014, your Amadeus bought Navitaire for $830 million. It's a technology company that is very API, new, modern, technology-driven, and is very much focused on the low-cost carriers. Traditionally, Amadeus, Sabre, and Travelport, you really haven't served that network. So how are you going to invest some more in providing low-cost carriers with tech?
So I think, again, there is an element which is technology and then a distribution strategy. So we can provide systems to low-cost carriers that we'll continue to do, and we do it through Navitaire. A very different question is how much they want to participate on indirect distribution. How much do they see value on it? So when we talk about the leading low-cost carriers, probably they have done their cycle of growth of penetrating more in the market and actually are looking for new ways of growing. And that means business travelers, that means interconnecting flights, that means being feeder for a long haul. And whenever you get into that complexity, whenever you get into that space, then all of a sudden the global distribution systems become the solution, because you're not doing any more local distribution, you're doing global distribution as the name refers. So I think we see that the leading carriers will more and more. We have 110 low-cost carriers now integrated into the system. We see high demand for it, more and more a percentage of our bookings. So I think it is natural. And then the difference between what we had as the integration for low-cost carriers and NDC was always this, is this a push or pull? So whenever you had the old standard, it was much more of a push process. Now with NDC, both low-cost carriers and full-service carriers are going to be on a pull mode. So this means we have a little bit of a convergence in there. So by investing in NDC, we believe that's going to open the doors for more low-cost carrier distribution.
Okay. So what we're seeing is that Amadeus, you've made essentially the sales pitch of you guys are sort of the linchpin to try to enable the distribution, be able to take the most advantage as a technology partner for airlines and for other suppliers. What we're seeing is that airlines seem to be split in like 3 groups. There's the group that loves Amadeus and is trying to do more with you. Later today, we're going to hear from Air Canada, which last autumn, they not only renewed their distribution agreement, but now they're going to use you for more retailing and merchandising. We're also going to hear from Southwest, and Southwest says we don't want to distribute through you, even though we're the most popular airline in America for a couple decades, we don't need you. And then there's this other group that has worked with you for a long time, large groups like Lufthansa, British Airways, Air France, American Airlines, and they seem to be using building blocks to try to move away from you. So how do you explain that your sales pitch works really well with some and not with others?
I think first thing is, it is the internal view of how much do you believe IT is a differentiator for you and for your strategy as an airline. We believe that that's an element that is prone to outsource. We feel it is much more how you use the technology than actually owning the code that is what's going to make a difference. And we see in every organization you have cycles. So you have medium-sized airlines and smaller airlines. They clearly see that the amount of investment they would have to do to have the same level of functionality we have in Amadeus is not an option. So they are very clear that they're going to outsource. As you move up and you have larger airlines, then they do have the choice. They can have the possibility of having internal IT staff trying to do research and modules, or they can decide to outsource. We feel that that's a question of time. Now we're having merchandising as a new frontier. So yes, many airlines are investing on the merchandising, even though they continue giving us, let's say, the core infrastructure. And we believe that by showing our products and continue with our investments, eventually they will see that is a very expensive game. I mean, you have to invest hundreds of millions of euros every year, and you could be doing better with that money.
But some airlines sort of, so Lufthansa in the past couple of years, they've moved 10% of the volume that used to go through Amadeus and Travelport into their direct channel. They've built direct tech because when we've talked, American Airlines last summer debuted a new technology system, and they offered a new thing where they'll pay $2 per segment to travel agencies to use American Airlines tech to work direct. So they're kind of bypassing your system. They invite you guys to sort of participate, but one of the things we hear is with the very large airline groups is that they've gotten to be profitable in the past 5 years. Technology costs have come down for API-driven things. There's this great data opportunity to sort of get in there and learn how to interact more with the customers and sort of get closer to the demand curve, optimizing the demand curve. And they feel like Amadeus, Sabre, and Travelport have historically, the technology costs have not come down as much as it has in other sectors. The quality of the data has not come up in enough sectors, and they're going to build their own tech. So is there what is your message to them that you are willing to sort of meet the large carriers where they need?
I think every time that you have outsourced a certain function for a long time, you sort of lose touch a bit. So I think that's the process that we're going through. If we were only technology, then I would say, yes, I would see costs declining. We're not only technology. Whenever we're talking about distribution, we have the technology component, but we have the sales teams, we have the sales staff, we have the support that we provide on their behalf, connecting to the travel agencies. You're talking about sometimes commercial conditions, so it means that there is an economic incentive that happens between GDSs and agencies that needs to be taken into account and sometimes needs to be replaced. So I think whenever you're going on your own infrastructure, you're going to find out all of those costs. And then it is not only technology, you have to add all of those pieces in. And I think that we are processing now 600 million bookings on behalf of airlines. Any given carrier, if you're saying you have a lot of success, maybe you're going to be processing 10 million or so, and you need to be investing quite a lot of money. So I think once in the 10 years you spread that cost of investment over the transactions, you're going to see that scale matters. That you actually need to outsource, and just keeping up with the level of investment, it is not going to be good. You have, let's say, maybe a short-term happiness, but that in the long run, we don't see as an issue. So we don't feel as a threat. I think the message to us is, what is the functionality that is missing that they would like to have? And it's usually not about functionality. It's usually about the business model. There is an element of how we're compensation agencies, who would like to have the money flows. So I think it is much more of a commercial discussion than actually a true technology issue. And I think that's the conversation is shifting.
So one thing for the audience, like when you talk about, well, I was on a flight here, and they were asking me, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to be meeting with the head of Amadeus, Travel and Site Report. And they're like, well, what do they do? And I said, well, if you think about, they're a middleman tech company. So if you think about Amazon's in the middle, they will buy the Kellogg cereal, and then they take money from customers, and then they give them the product. But you kind of have the reverse model. You charge the suppliers, the airlines, to give you the content, and then you pay the agencies, your customers, to do that. Does the business model seem a little weird?
I think the value always shifts where there is scarcity. So let's get here at the stadium. You have very few seats, huge amount of demand. So probably whenever you're thinking about distributing the seats here, you're going to have the possibility that it's going to be very easy. You're going to put your website, and you have people just flooding to buy. No. Now, when we go into the airline world, we're talking about many, many empty seats and not customers to cover all of the 80% of the capacity. So it means that airlines needs to go out on the market and find what are those missing passengers that I need to put on my plane in order to make my flight profitable. So whenever you have that element, it means that the value will shift to distribution for the retailers, our customers. And the question is, what is going to be our economic model between what we do and what our agency they do? You typically make the analogy of us being the trucks, and our agencies are the shops. So it means that, yes, you need to have a co-investment. Because, yes, you're investing on us, but there is systems. When we talk about the investment Expedia needs to do, when we're talking about all of the point of sales, be it corporate, Amex, Kausen, they all need to invest heavy amount of money in order to change and adapt their flows to what the providers want.
But the airlines would say, who should pony up? I feel like the Amadeus, Sabre, and Travelport say the airline should pay to upgrade the travel agency's tech. Yeah. And the airlines say, you should pay. And the airlines say, you have twice the average profit margins that they do, and you're in a supply relationship where you're paying these agents.
So let's get the 2 points. So first is, if it is about money flows, that's the private channel. So if you like to have a discussion about who pays who and what are the money flows, we're open to that.
So private channel is where airlines will make a deal with an agency. They'll say, like, travel agency X will give you certain content and money, just to get...
Yes. Yeah. So for everyone, the private channel would be, then we don't make just one relationship. They pay the GDS, and the GDS share back to agencies. There are, in fact, airlines pay agencies and GDSs, each of them for their specific value. So we have that, if that's the criticism. And the other criticism was our margins. No, as a software business, we have to invest ahead of when that product will monetize. So no one is paying us for GDPR. No one is paying us for cloud.
GDPR is the privacy regulation.
Privacy regulation. No one is paying us to get out of the TPF and get into open systems. No one is paying us to bring the revenue management. No one is paying us to do NDC. So when you get all of these components that I expect someone to be investing for free, because essentially this is functionality that we're going to make available and airlines will use only if they sell. This means that I need to have a margin that allows me to have the capacity to invest prior to what an airline customer will use. And I think this is common practice in all of the technology companies. If we go to SAP, Microsoft, any technology company, you're going to see that they have high margins because a high percentage of their revenue needs to go into tech investment. We invest 17% of that margin into tech. So we believe that that is benefit that goes back to customers. Why? Because we're making our homework and we're making sure the technology is always current and available for our customers to enjoy.
Okay. One more question before we go to audience questions. Let's move off of air. You recently got promoted to the executive committee. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
So we see. Let's talk about non-air content. We see Expedia in the past couple of years bought Silver Rail in order to build a global distribution system for rail. This past spring, Booking Holdings and TripAdvisor both separately bought companies that they see have the potential to become global distribution systems for tours and activities. Alternative lodging is another sector that Amadeus hasn't gotten in. When are you going to get into some of these other sectors?
Okay. So on rail, which is, I think, being in Europe and being close to rail, that's an area we're doing a huge amount of investments. We're discussing we have the Benelux, we have Deutsche Bahn, we have a series of customers that we are doing IT projects with now. And I think that is becoming mainstream for distribution. I think that is the difference. Typically, we would invest on their own proprietary systems and PSS. I think now what is interesting is they're saying, hey, I need to participate on the indirect distribution. I need to participate on their world where maybe I need to compete with a flight. Maybe I need to be part of a total trip. So now we're opening the gates of distribution to these providers. And I think the other interesting phenomenon is the ground transportation. It is all of the transfers that typically has not been mechanized. It's used bookings on the side and telephone. And
so that's
now
like
with
airport shuttles and
airport
on-demand
shuttles
cars?
and sometimes even rail shuttles to airports, city shuttles. So I mean, we're talking about ground transportation and rail that's coming very closely because you need, let's say, not all door-to-door, but at least all possible means of transportation for you to get from location A to location B. That is taking place. Then you have other areas that are more destination, hotel, activities. We feel that that is, let's say, a different spectrum because it is more on-trip. So right now we're focusing more on the planning and how are we going to get customers there and back.
Okay.
In destination, we're still not that strong, but I mean, as you mentioned, loads of interesting travel players are doing a great job in there, and I think it's opportunity for everyone.
Definitely. Let's go to some audience questions, please, if we can get them up on the screen. As the largest player in travel technology and knowing the preference of customers to integrate between vendors, what is Amadeus doing to make that a reality?
Yeah. I think I mentioned on the technical side where we needed to depart from TPF and build this new trip record. So on the moment you have airlines talking about orders, on the moment you have every player who wants to have a different relationship, we need to create that multi-provider, let's say, travel folder and trip folder. So that is a very big investment that we're doing on our side, and it goes together with investment on NDC. And I think customers, even the way we have organized the information, now you're expecting to look at the mobile and see your itinerary based on a timeline. So it changes completely the way we're doing stuff. It is not anymore records of air, car, and rail. It is much more how your trip is going to be based on the timeline and how we organize that information with customers. So that's our core investment in their area.
So what's the market share trend of the global distribution systems in recent years? So I guess I'd like to rephrase this slightly. So for people in the audience, when we come out to Silicon Valley, the question is, okay, are you guys dinosaurs or are you rising? And is there any metric you can put behind that in market share that will sort of back up your claim that you guys are doing well?
Look, I mean, we are doing well. I mean, if we look at our numbers, we're constantly growing. We're growing market share. We're growing transactions. But I think being stuck on what market share represents, how much is the GDS market share on the overall air distribution market? So I think we're moving more and more away from a GDS market share and seeing in all different business models, all kinds of transactions, are we growing at the pace of the industry? And when I look at our transactions, we're growing above the pace of the industry. So my own assessment is that we're making progress, that we're growing faster than the industry, and therefore we're becoming more relevant. I think that's our own internal benchmark than looking specifically at how GDS is, because different players have different criteria on how they measure it and how they count their transactions. So there is lots of possibilities for mistakes there.
Okay, but just to underline it, Amadeus has tended to say that it has about 60% share in Europe, and that in a lot of different geographic regions, you've been sort of gaining share relative to...
We have 44% worldwide. Okay. We have been growing share since we started now.
Okay. So that's 44% share of the three, is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But again, is that the right KPI? We find it less and less relevant, and we find more relevant is our benchmark against the industry as a whole. Because maybe if GDSs are growing slower than the rest of the industry, then you're becoming a little bit irrelevant every year, even though you may be growing your GDS market share. So the benchmark for us is really the growth of the travel market.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we're going to end it there for time. We'd like to thank you for coming, Decius, and good luck with the World Cup. I hope things go well for Brazil.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.